Hi, guys. Welcome back to Get Your Shit Together podcast with Emily Samir. I am so excited to be filming today because, as you will see, I am not in my apartment living room. We are at Division 88 Studios, and I am so excited to be working with them and having the privilege of being here. You guys, it's time to get our shit together. No, because after next weekend, I am never drinking again. What the fuck is a 401k? Look how hot the guy is that I just matched with on Tinder. Am I the only one freaking out right now? So, hope y'all fuck with the set. There's me popping off, and there's some comic books, I guess, around the thing. Marvel, maybe. You know what's one thing about me is I have never seen. Okay, I think I've seen one Marvel movie, and it was Morbius, and I saw it in theaters, and I was like, this is such a great movie. And then I told everyone that I loved Morbius, and then everyone started trolling me because there was like, there's no way that you actually like that movie. And I didn't realize it was like a joke on TikTok that everyone was saying it was like a really good movie, so they would put it back in theaters. And then when they put it back in theaters, nobody went. Anyways, I thought it was a fantastic movie, but I guess if I thought the worst one in the Marvel series was really good, then I should probably watch the rest of them. But anyways, today I am wearing my Toronto Maple Leafs jersey in honor of the Four Nations finals being tonight. I do have some parlays on Canada winning. And to be honest, I really don't know anything about sports betting. The man in my life was helping me make some sports betting estimates today. I don't know. And I was just like going through the different rosters, and I was like, you know what? Jack Hughes, I fuck with that name. Yeah, he's going to get a goal tonight. So that's my strategy, is just good vibes and confidence. Also, I'm kind of wearing this jersey as a little bit of a rage bait because there are currently 150,000 men on the internet who want me dead. I didn't realize I was like poking the bear so much whenever Maggie and I's episode, whenever we were talking about hockey guys and kind of shit talking them. But I posted a clip to the podcast account just like saying that like hockey men are kind of trash. All high level hockey guys should have to go through like some type of course on how to treat people with like respect and dignity. And I mean, guys, there's trash people in every discipline, but I was just saying that hockey men are trash, and then people literally want me dead. Wait, I like actually need to read you some of the comments. Like, I've definitely experienced hate before, but like on different pieces of content that I made, but no one ever saying, wait, honestly, they kind of got creative with the comments. I'm not even gonna lie. We should check you through the boards. I'll take my course when you guys take an AA course. Sir, you know nothing about my alcohol consumption. This one was actually, honestly, this is what I mean by they were getting creative with it. More shares than likes. Might be time to put the mic down. And to that, I said, are you looking for work? You can be my data analyst. Mad the hockey boys weren't down, so I said maybe they'd be down for you, Josh. There should be requirements to be able to purchase podcast equipment. Anyways, you get the gist. The hockey boys are mad. And at first, I was like, okay, fuck. Like, it was low-key hitting me. Like, I was, like, actually down bad for a minute. I was like, do I delete this? But then if I delete it, they're going to be like, we won. Like, if you can't take the heat, don't stand in the kitchen. And then they started coming for my looks. And then they were like, get on Ozempic. And they're like, I'll take my empathy course when you take a course about nutrition and fitness. And then I was like, oh, we came to play, huh? So like I said, I was kind of down bad about it for a little bit, but then I just like shook it off. And the next day I woke up and I was like, this is funny. And the reason why I was able to do that, and this is kind of pulling together what this episode is about today, is because I, for some reason, have always had really great confidence within myself. And I didn't really ever realize that like confidence wasn't just like a naturally born instilled thing that everyone has. Because it's so funny, like people in my life will always ask me, they'll be like, how are you so confident? And I guess like that kind of sounds like an insult because it's like, how are you of all people so confident? But I have always operated on this notion that I am the kindest, the hottest, the most self-disciplined, the most talented person that I've ever met in my life. Now listen, I know deep down in my heart that like that's not true. Like I'm not a narcissist. I know that none of that is true. However, I have always, since I was a kid, just talked to myself with the most positive self-talk. And I didn't really realize that that is what instilled my confidence, but I think a lot of people, the reason why they lack confidence is because they constantly talk so negatively to yourself. If you wake up every morning and you're like, I hate myself, I look fat in these jeans, my hair is greasy, my skin looks awful. Yeah, no shit, you're gonna hate yourself because you're actively speaking these things into existence. But for some reason, from the ripe age of 6 years old, I looked myself in the mirror and I said, we are never going to talk bad about ourselves. And that is why I have always had such high confidence. And when we think about like getting our shit together and what we need to do in our 20s to be able to have like the life that we want to live when we're in their 30s, we're in our 40s, and we're kind of like placing the seeds for roots to grow, it is all about confidence. There have been so many opportunities that I've been able to get purely from delusion and confidence. Like even this, for example, guys, this is my 4th episode. Like honestly, no one really watches this podcast yet, but yet I'm at a studio and filming with help from people, you know, and it's because of the confidence that I ensue that I'm able to walk up and be like, this is my name, this is my game, let's fucking do this. And that all comes from positive self-talk. From a really early age, I knew that I was gonna succeed in life. But I knew I was going to succeed in life because I actively told myself that every single day. If you're starting on your confidence journey, my best piece of advice to you would be to start with positive self-talk. That is something that my mom always instilled from me from a young age. And one of my favorite quotes ever is, there is nothing in this life that can hurt you more than your thoughts, and there is nothing in this life that can heal you more than your thoughts. And it's so true because we create our reality. And like, if you want to get into like the power of manifestation, we can. And I think there's a lot of people who will shit on that, but it is genuinely proven that what you tell yourself and the thoughts that you are constantly circulating within your brain do have an effect on your conscious life. I feel like a lot of people assume because I have confidence that I don't have insecurities, but y'all, let me tell you, that is not true at all. Like, if anything, I think I'm a really insecure person. There are many things that I am very insecure about. However, confidence has nothing to do with insecurities. And I think that when we think about like getting our shit together and becoming a more confident version of ourselves and growing within our 20s, we need to eliminate the ideology that confidence and insecurities are intertwined and they are the same thing, because they are absolutely not. If you think, oh, I won't have confidence until I eliminate all my insecurities, that's not true at all. And I also think that it's really important that we start normalizing our insecurities. So I thought that it would be really important for me to like go through my insecurities and also like help people feel less alone. I think in the age of social media, where we're all just showing our best looks on Instagram and our best on TikTok and presenting ourselves of like our ideal version of ourselves, it's really easy to look at that and then it'd be like, oh, this person has no insecurities, this person has no flaws. Baby girl, let me tell you right now, I have so many flaws, okay? Number 1, hate the cellulite on my legs. I go to the gym 6 days a week, work out legs twice a week. I've always had cellulite and I probably always will. Number 2, what's another random insecurity of mine? Oh, I don't know why, but my fingers are so unbelievably dry and I like pick the skin off of my fingers. And so I never want people to look at my hands because they're literally, like the skin on my hands are literally always flaking off. And then I can't take like cute, nice aesthetic photos of my nails because my fingers look disgusting and they look like I eat them for breakfast. Another insecurity of mine is that like low key, kind of got a mustache. I don't know who, you know what? I do know who created this lighting. It was the devil himself. The devil himself created car lighting, because tell me why I will look so good. I'm like, yo, I'm low-key fine shit, doing my makeup in my mirror, go in the car mirror, pull the mirror down that's in front of the driver's seat, and now I can see every single hair, every single pore, every single insecurity on my face. So I was going to this man's house and pulled down the car mirror And I'm like, holy shit, I have a mustache. Oh my God. I can't go to this guy's house, and I'm not at my house anymore. And I'm like, well, I can't I can't wax this. Like, what do I do? Like, and he's gonna notice this, and it's something I'm insecure about. So I literally went to Shoppers Drug Mart. I got one of the like girl facial razors, and I dry shaved my mustache in my car in the devil mirror itself, because I was like, I'm so insecure about this. Like, I will be thinking about this the whole time I'm hanging out with this man. I don't recommend you dry shaving your mustache in the devil mirror itself, because you probably will cut yourself. Luckily, we prevailed. But the moral of this story is that we all have physical insecurities. I would actually say the majority of my insecurities come from my personality. And while I think I'm great and while I think I'm amazing, there are a lot of things I'm very insecure about within my personality. And a significant one is actually my ADHD. And while I think like my ADHD in a lot of ways is my superpower, because it gives me the ability to do things really quickly, it gives me the ability to shine and like be a star and have star quality, having ADHD like quite literally is probably my biggest op. Today, from my hometown after reading week, my room was spotless. My roommate and her man was like, oh, can we come up and hang out in your room? They come up. I haven't been home for less than like probably 10 minutes. My whole entire room is destroyed because I was looking for my makeup bag within my suitcase. And that's just ADHD. They come in my room and they're like, how did it get like this? Like, it was literally just clean. I'm like, guys, I don't know, but we're not talking about it. Another thing about my ADHD that's always been really difficult is I am so injury prone, and y'all know this. If you listen to my first episode, like, you know the lore of me cutting off my finger. You know the lore that I've broken my wrist 3 times. And one thing about being really injury prone is bitches will always have the audacity to be like, oh my God, you broke your arm again? Like, what do you think I go outside and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna try and break my arm? And that actually was an insecurity of mine for a really long time, of how accident prone I was, because I actually thought people thought I was doing it for attention. And I'm like, I don't think you guys understand, like, being accident prone is like genuinely engraved within my personality. So much so that I got a new doctor recently, and he was doing like a little meet and greet checkup. And so I had to fill out this form. And one of the questions was like, is there anything else I should know about you for being your doctor? And I wrote in it that I'm really accident prone. And then whenever we were having our consultation, he's like going through the form and he starts laughing. And I'm like, what are you laughing at? And then I was like, oh, are you laughing at the fact that I'm really accident prone? Because I thought that's what he would be laughing at. And he's like, no, I'm laughing at whenever there was a question that said, is there any other medical concerns you have? You put ADHD management. I'm like, why are you laughing at that? And he's like, because I've been trying to figure out for the last 30 minutes if you have chronic anxiety or ADHD. And I'm like, oh, no, it's just ADHD, babe. Anyways, so there are a lot of ways that my ADHD manifests into my insecurities. And I think insecurities is like a juggling act for a lot of people between like mental and then also physical. But like I said, like, I think it's just really important that as we get older and as we're working on our confidence, that we know that confidence and insecurities are not intertwined, because we are going to have insecurities for the rest of our lives. That's just point blank. Like, love you, boo, but like, your skin might be an insecurity for you. Like, it'll clear up, but like, there's still going to be another thing to be insecure about, because we're human. We compare ourselves to people. We have, especially now with social media, this like constant reminder of what we should be and what we aren't. And we're just always gonna have insecurities. Unfortunately, that's just the gist of it. But that doesn't mean that you can't be a confident ass bitch. And you know how you become a confident ass bitch? Samantha, you become a confident ass bitch by telling yourself you're a confident ass bitch. So the next time you have a little insecurity in yourself and you think, you're like, oh my God, like, my skin is so bad, or like, oh my God, I have really bad, poor time management. Like, this means that like I can't achieve all my dreams. Wrong. No, we need to rethink about the way that we think about ourselves, and we only think positive self-talk. Now, we can always, don't get me wrong, like, we can always acknowledge that we have these insecurities, and we can always acknowledge our faults, But we have to go back and reinstill the positive self-talk into our brain. Speaking of my ADHD, I didn't actually really know that I had ADHD or ADD until I was in like grade 9, grade 10. Don't get me wrong, like I always knew I was kind of insane. I always knew I had a little sparkle in me, shall you say, but no one ever really brought it up to me until I was like in grade 9, in grade 10, and then I started struggling a little bit more in school, and the time management became a big issue, and then I was constantly missing things, and I wasn't very I lack like attention to detail, and that manifested a lot within my schoolwork as school got harder, and I'm like, holy shit, am I like dumb? But I was just like, okay, there's clearly something not clicking up here. And then in grade 9, that is when I got diagnosed with ADHD. Grade 9 and getting diagnosed with ADHD is also the exact same time that I realized that I had issues with eating. Now, I want to preface the next part of the show with a strong trigger warning. The next 15-20 minutes, I'm going to be talking all about anorexia, food issues, body dysmorphia, food anxiety. And if this is something that you are currently struggling with and you think it would be harmful for you to continue watching, I really encourage you to click off. And I would love to post some resources within the description of this show. So grade 9 is when I got diagnosed with ADHD. And grade 9 is also the first time that I noticed I started skipping meals a little bit. I noticed that I was starting to body check a lot, and I was like taking pictures of myself and I was putting them in my eyes only, and I was comparing myself of, oh, did I lose weight? Did I gain weight? And I had always had like definitely some body issues throughout my childhood. I was definitely not like a skinny stick little girl growing up. I was a competitive gymnast. I had a lot of muscle from a very young age. And for some reason too, like whenever I was younger, I was definitely labeled as like the fat funny friend, which I have no idea why, because I was absolutely not overweight as a child. I just had a lot of muscle on me naturally, but I just kind of got labeled as that within like my friends, or at least I felt I got labeled like that, and I was subjected to a lot of jokes within that. And grade 9 is when I really started feeling the effects to that. And that's also whenever my ADHD started getting really bad and really apparent. I started noticing I was body checking a lot. I started noticing I was skipping meals, and I brought this up to my parents. But I honestly don't remember in grade 9 when I brought this up to them, and I was so scared to tell them, and I was so scared to tell any of my friends or anyone around me, because I was worried that they weren't going to believe me. I was worried that they were going to be like, well, we saw you eat lunch last week, or we saw you eat this bagel for breakfast. Like, clearly you don't have an eating disorder. And that was something that held me back from sharing my struggles so much throughout my early teen years. And I think that's something that a lot of people who struggle with eating disorders and mental health in general also deal with. They think, oh, I'm not bad enough for it to be a topic of conversation, or, oh, I'm not thin enough, or I don't hit a certain number on a metric scale for this to actually be an issue to bring up to people. So I just didn't bring it up to people for a really long time. And then I eventually did bring it up a little bit to my parents. And my dad actually told me that my Aunt Kim called him one day. I went to go stay with my Aunt Kim whenever I was in grade 7 for like a week in Edmonton. And she called him one day and was like, I think Emily has an eating disorder. And he was like, really? Like, I don't think so. She was like, yeah, like she was just at my place for a week, and I just like noticed a lot of habits of hers, and I think there's something going on there. I was 12. I was in grade 7. And so this was something that like people in my life were noticing from the point I was 12 years old. And yet by the time I was 15, like I didn't even think that it was something reasonable to bring up with my family, because I didn't think it was a big enough deal, or I didn't think it was bad enough yet. And that thought in your head is ultimately what is going to end up hurting you the most. From the moment you start thinking, oh, there might be something off here, that is when you get help. You don't get help when it's too late. You get help whenever you start to feel those thoughts within you manifesting. But anyways, so I was in grade 9. I noticed I started skipping meals. I noticed I started having these weird body checking. And that's whenever I started getting embarrassed to eat in front of people, because I was like, well, I told some people that I have issues with eating. I told some people that this is affecting my life. Now if I eat in front of them, now I feel like they're not going to believe me. And I had these like distinct memories of being in my high school, and there's like a little small concrete, like not even a hallway, but just this like little space in between the girls' bathroom and the girls' change room. And I remember like days where I was really insecure, I would literally like go to this like black pitch room that was fully concrete and go eat my lunch there, because I was so embarrassed of eating in front of people, because I was worried, since I had told some of my friends and since I had confided in them, I was worried that like if they saw me eating, they'd be like, oh, she doesn't have an eating disorder. Even though that is absolutely not true, I had the most supportive friends in the world. I had the most supportive family in the world. They absolutely would have never thought that. However, it was just like the disease within my head that was making me think that. So that was grade 9. Actually, no, you know what? I have one other story from grade 9 that like really affected me throughout like my eating disorder and throughout these issues in my life. And I remember I was at the cafeteria and I was sitting with all of my friends, and one of our guy friends at the time said to me, he was like, Emily, how come you never bring a lunch? Is it because you have an eating disorder? And they were like, oh wait, to have an eating disorder, you have to be skinny. And like, looking back at it now, like he was obviously making a joke. Like there is no bad blood now, but it's comments like that and insensitive comments that people say that will just later on, like that's why I didn't bring a lunch to school, is because people made those comments. Or that's why I feel like then when I did eat, I would have to go eat in a change room or not have people watch me or eat in secret. And it's because of like comments like that. So I think like in early teen years, it is so heavily important to have these conversations with people so comments like that don't get made, or if comments like that do get made, you know how to deal with them. Because that's something like one of my stupid guy friends said when he was 15, and like probably didn't think ever that that was going to affect me, but that's literally a comment that I have carried until I am now 21 years old. That was grade 9. Grade 10, I started like continuing to like eat in secret. I was like embarrassed to eat a load amount of food in front of people, and my weight would just fluctuate. And some weeks I would be really, really good and I would be able to eat normally, and some weeks would like be a week from hell. And it kind of went in waves like that throughout the majority of my high school experience. And I actually think a lot of that has to do with my ADHD. And I mean, my eating disorder, we'll get to it later, but the root of my eating disorder genuinely like was my ADHD and me managing my emotions. But I explained to people a lot of how ADHD works is like a light switch. You are either fully on or you are fully off. And that manifested also within my eating. I will either eat literally nothing for weeks on end, or I will eat absolutely everything in my sight. And so whenever grade 9 hit and I started to see the effects of my ADHD, that's also when I saw how it manifested within my eating disorder. So like I said, it went up and down in waves, my eating, throughout my teenage years. And grade 12 during COVID was when it got really bad. And grade 12 is also the year that I started abusing my prescription drugs. Okay, so I want to like add another trigger warning to this part. Just talking about like ways, because I never want to give someone an idea of how to create these unhealthy habits within yourself. That's literally like the last thing I want to do, because I remember when I was 15, I would literally like watch videos like these and I feel like they would like give me inspo. And that's absolutely not what I'm trying to do here. So it was COVID And I was on a certain type of medication that started to decrease my eating habits, and it started to decrease my appetite. And I noticed that, and I was like, okay, from now on, like, I'm always going to be on this drug. And from there, it just got so out of hand, and it just like completely wore me away. And within like weeks to a month, like I looked like a completely different person than I did months prior because of this drug and because of it decreasing my appetite. But I knew it was doing that. That's the thing, is I was very well aware that that this drug was helping me have an eating disorder. And that's so fucked up to say, but like that was my truth at the time. I will also say, like, as I've kind of gotten older and as I've been able to reflect on my eating disorder and like why it kind of happened, I think like a big part of a lot of young girls and like young guys too, eating disorders is like the whole, how do I look? How do other people's look? Comparing yourselves to other people. But that was actually never the reason why I would treat myself the way I treated myself. I treated myself and my body and restricting my eating in that way out of a form of control. I think we all try and pick areas to control and to make us feel better. And I was able to control my life through my eating. I've always been like a jack of all trades, master of none. And I always kind of grew up with that actually like affecting my self-esteem. And I was like, oh, I might not be the best gymnast. I might not be the best tennis player. I might not be the best public speaker. But if we were on a desert island, I could outlast you in a starvation contest. And like, I don't know where that came to be in my head, but that is where I saw myself shine. That is where I could control myself. That is where I could be the best. And so the form of control and the form of like seeing myself like be good at something, and being good at something, I'm referring to literally like having an eating disorder. That is where it came from. It didn't necessarily come from like, oh, I want to look like these girls on the internet. Because like I said, I've always had a lot of confidence. I've never really like been super insecure about my looks. Like I've always operated, like I said, on that like a high vibration of confidence. That my eating disorder actually stemmed from how I felt internally about myself, and a way to control those thoughts and a way to feel like I was good at something. And the way I felt like I was good at something was continuing to take this prescription that was helping me not eat. So I started withering away and I started becoming like someone I didn't even recognize. But I liked that. I liked that because it meant that I was doing something and it was working. And it's funny because I like obviously did like the way I was looking at first, but it became to the point where like I looked so different. Like I literally had no ass. I was genuinely starting to get insecure about the fact that I was so skinny. But it seemed like that's actually what I wanted, but it wasn't. It was just a way to control it. So, how did I get out of that? How am I now? I'm like 3 years out from that. How did I come out the other side? I am so fortunate to have a really amazing support system within my life. However, it actually didn't feel like that at the start. Me and my parents have always been really close. I love my parents so much, but I've never really, as a kid, I never really felt like I could fully open up to them about that. And it's also because I didn't want them to be disappointed in me. Like I didn't want them to be like, oh, this is what our daughter has become. And so I was really nervous about telling them. And one of my dear close friends, when things got really, really bad when I was in grade 12, finally reached out to them and finally was like, hey, Emily is going through this. She needs some serious help. And if you feel like you have similar issues and you need a parent or a guardian or someone close to you to intervene, but you are like genuinely too scared to tell them, honestly have a friend. Because I was so upset that my friend did that at first because I wanted to keep doing that to my body. I didn't want to get help. I was so sick in the head. Are you kidding me? I didn't want to get help or go to treatment or start eating again. I wanted to stay like this forever, but I couldn't. And so I was pissed, to say the least, that they did that. But in the end, I'm so thankful that they intervened because that needed to happen. So if you feel like you need someone to actually be the person that helps start that process, I highly encourage that, because I don't actually see a world that I would have like gone to my parents and sat them down and be like, I need serious help, because number one, I didn't want serious help. Number two, I was too embarrassed. And again, I was continuing to think like, oh, I'm not bad enough. Oh, I'm not in the hospital yet. Oh, I'm not technically dying. Like, I don't need help yet. I'm not bad enough. When, like we said before, that is so toxic, and you start getting help the moment you feel yourself slipping, not the moment that you've fallen off the cliff. So my friend intervenes, and I still remember the day my mom told me, she was like, Emily, can I talk to you in the gazebo for a second? And we went down the gazebo, and I knew what it was going to be about. And she started talking to me about it, and she was like, we need to get this under control. She was like, I signed you up for a eating disorder treatment program, and it starts X date. And I was so resistant to that. I remember literally, again, doing silly body checks and being like, I have to start treatment in a week. Like, last week looking this good. Like, it's so awful looking back at it. But yeah, I remember I started treatment. It was online. I was seeing a nutritionist once a week, and I was seeing a therapist once a week, or might even been twice a week. And I was also getting my blood monitored regularly. I was getting an EKG done on my heart. And I guess like I didn't realize, obviously, there's going to be physical health ramifications on your health whenever that's happening. But I don't think like I fully realized that like, oh shit, like my heart could actually stop, or like, oh shit, like I could like literally develop osteoporosis from this. But again, it was that thinking of like, oh, I'm not bad enough, like it's not actually going to happen to me, that stopped me from like thinking that. Anyways, so I started going to treatment, and I started going to counseling, and I was still resistant to it. Like, I was going into first year university. It was the summer in between my grade 12 year and first year university. And I was like, nah, like my parents can make me go to this. I'll talk about my like feelings for an hour. Like I'll do this like silly program that they have me on for eating, but like I'll hide some of my food, or I remember this one conversation with my dad that like really impacted the way that I like was going about being resistant to my eating disorder recovery. And he sat me down and he was like, Emily, there are two ways that this eating disorder treatment is going to go. Number one, you're either going to recover, or number two, you're going to die. And I guess like it never really fully wrapped around my head that like those are the two options with having an eating disorder. You either recover or you die. Having an eating disorder is not a long-term solution or possibility. You cannot do that. You will either eventually recover or you will either die. And that conversation and seeing how it impacted my relationship with my dad was one of the driving forces in how I like started to be like, okay, maybe I'll start taking this a little seriously. And it was seeing the like ramifications that it had on my family and the people around me and my relationships that I was like, all right, I guess some things do need to change. And I think eating disorder recovery is about finding your why. Why do you want to recover? If it's not for you, is it for your family? If it's not for your family, is it for your quality of life? If it's not for your quality, find your why. My why at the time was for my family. It was destroying my family, and I knew that I couldn't continue on like this. I knew it was going to eventually break our bond. So that was my why at the start. As I've gotten older, my why has turned into the fact I know as a 21-year-old that having an eating disorder, like, You can't have an eating disorder and be able to achieve the dreams that you want to achieve. You can't have an eating disorder and be able to have a 12-hour workday absolutely grinding. Like, unfortunately, your brain just needs blood sugar and it just needs calories to operate. And I know this sounds like a bit like duh, obviously, but how I ended up getting out of my eating disorder ultimately and how I found my why is like honestly maturing and honestly realizing like, holy shit, like having an eating disorder is kind of immature. Like it's kind of silly for me to think that I can live my whole life like this. And something that I also have like really taken away from like and having an eating disorder, and if you have an eating disorder because you want to look a certain way, or if you restrict your eating because you want to look a certain way, doing that is actually the long route. People think restrictive eating is the shortcut to losing weight, but it's actually the long route. The shortcut, if you want to look a certain way aesthetically, if that's the reason why you started restricting eating, the shortcut to that process is actually taking the long way. It's actually fueling your body. It's actually going to the gym. It's actually being in a slight calorie deficit, not a 1,500 calorie deficit. Because you will never be able to have an eating disorder and keep up that current physique forever. Like I said, you will either recover or you will die. So I started, I think, like my recovery process kind of that fall. And I was not honest with myself about the medication I was taking at that point. Like to be point blank with you, I was lying to my doctors and to my therapist. They all wanted me to get off that medication because they knew it was decreasing my appetite and suppressing it. And I was like, guys, no, like if you take me off of it, it's gonna be worse. It's actually gonna be worse for my eating disorder. Like I was just lying to them because I wanted to keep fueling it. I knew that drug was helping me fuel that eating disorder. But I knew if I told them that, they would obviously make me get off of it. And I was going through so much therapy and I was going through so many doctor's appointments and I had to go home every month for constant doctor's appointments to get my blood work done and yada, yada, yada. It wasn't till I admitted to myself and to my therapist that that drug is what is keeping this eating disorder alive, and I was willing to go off of it, that is when things started to turn around for me. And that is when I actually committed to the recovery of my eating disorder. And then once I got off that drug, I started to get a lot better really quickly. My appetite got better. My mental clarity got better. And like I said, that's when I started to be able to realize that low key having an eating disorder is kind of immature. And I'm not trying to belittle anyone who has an eating disorder, but if we look at the numbers, the majority of people who struggle with eating disorders and struggle with restrictive eating are the younger generations and are that pre-teen to teen to young adult. And it's just because in that time, we are so vulnerable and we are so immature that we are constantly comparing ourselves to others. We are constantly letting our insecurities affect the way that we live our life. And we start to let that have an effect on other areas of our life, like eating. And it's just as you get older, you start to be able to just combat those things. You start to be able to be like, this is the body that I was given. This is the body that I was meant to have. And you start just to be able to realize that I can't do anything about that. I'm either going to accept the body that I'm in and flourish in that, or I'm gonna have a shitty quality of life and I'm going to not be able to go out with my friends because I'm insecure about what I look like, or I'm insecure if there's gonna be food there that I don't wanna eat. Having an eating disorder fucking sucks. If you've ever gone through one, if you've ever had restrictive eating, you know it fucking sucks. And it literally affects every single area of your life. It affects if you're gonna go to that party. It affects what you're gonna wear. It affects, your workout habits. It affects every single area of your life. And it also is constantly being thought of 24/7. When I was really in the thick of my eating disorder, there wasn't one thought in my head that wasn't relating to food. And so getting over that and how I got over that hurdle was honestly my dad's advice of like, or my dad just saying, it's either gonna end in recovery or death. And I was like, you know what? You're right. And that's whenever the acceptance started, because I was like, I can't have this quality of life for the rest of my life. And that's where the acceptance of my body started to come into play. That's when the acceptance of like, I can control my life positively in other ways besides this like one really negative area of my life. And that's kind of my story. I stopped treatment whenever I was like halfway through my first year of university. So I was in treatment for about 6 to 8 months roughly. It was actually getting to the point where like I started being really good with my recovery, and I was just like, I low-key like fucked with my therapist so heavy. I was just like showing her my Aritzia hauls, and I was like, hey, do you want to hear about the boy drama I have? And she was like your parents are paying me like $200 a session. Like maybe we can like talk about something else. Like maybe we can talk about your restrictive eating. But like honestly, once I really clicked in my head that I just cannot do this long term, that's when it started getting a lot better. And that's when I started realizing like the more I talk about this and the more I drag it on is actually just like making it worse for myself. And that's whenever I stopped therapy and I stopped treatment, and I was kind of able to work on it on my own. Now, let me tell you, is eating and my body image and controlling that aspect of my life something I still deal with? Yeah, absolutely. On average, it takes 7 years statistically to fully recover from an eating disorder. It is so ingrained into your lifestyle and your daily habits that when you start wanting to go back to the gym, like that's somewhere where I really saw it starting to like re-manifest in my life. Whenever I started going to the gym a lot, I would be like, okay, I did a workout, this was awesome, but now I like can't eat this sandwich because it's just gonna cancel out what I did. So honestly, if you're someone that's starting to recover from an eating disorder, starting to recover from these restrictive habits, binge eating or anorexia, whatever it is, I would probably honestly recommend to not dive into a health and fitness journey right away. Some people can do it. Some people, their health and fitness journey, it heals them and they find purpose and they find reason to fuel their body so they can go to the gym and so they can work out. For me, it was always the opposite. For me, like I said, like with my ADHD, I'm just like a light switch. It's like I'm either fully on or I'm fully off. So whenever I'm fully on, it's like, oh, I go to the gym. Well, I can't do this now because it would cancel that out. So for me, I just like had to put that on the back burner for a bit. I wasn't able to start fully working out where it wasn't toxic in my life until this year, until maybe 4 to 5 months ago is whenever I like got a gym membership and started working out really consistently. So I think for a lot of people, you kind of have to give it a break. You kind of have to give it a pause on the like gym journey, fitness girl journey of it all. And then I think once you do decide you're ready for that, I think it's really important to educate yourself on the way your body works. Like honestly, like I'm not really like a health science baddie. Like I never did science class in high school. That wasn't my genre. That wasn't my niche. So I literally knew nothing about the way the human body worked. I had no idea like how growing muscle worked. I didn't know any of that. So I think it's really important that like once you're coming back from an eating disorder, thinking and educating yourself about how to do this in a healthy way and from an educational way and also a scientific way. That kind of wraps up the story of my eating disorder. Like obviously there are layers upon layers with it. And obviously it is still like something that I notice myself slipping on every now and then, like when I have a really bad day, but it is nowhere where it used to be. And my takeaway from this, and what I hope you guys take away from this, is that you do not need to be in the hospital dying from an eating disorder to have an eating disorder. And I think that is what limits people from getting help so much, because no one thinks that they're bad enough. And that is what limited me from getting help. And if I hadn't had that friend that was a godsend and told my parents, I would have never gotten help. And so I really want to like drive that piece home, and I'm going to put all of my links for some resources that I know in this bio and in this description. And I really encourage you guys to take a look at it if you think this is something that you're struggling with. And yeah, guys, remember to speak kindly to yourself. Remember, confidence and insecurities are not the same thing. They're not intertwined. You can be a confident ass, baddie ass bitch and still have insecurities. And yeah, I know this was a little bit of a heavier topic than what we're usually used to on this show. Like last episode, we were literally talking about Sammy being a clown and telling a girl he was sorry for fucking their mom. And then we just started talking about like really serious and deathly mental disorders. But that's just kind of the nature of this show and getting your shit together in your 20s, because let's be honest, getting your shit together in your 20s has a million different disciplines that come along with it and a million different lessons. And fueling your body and putting good nutrients in your body is just one of them. But with that, that is everything I have for you guys today. Make sure to follow the podcast on Instagram and TikTok. Get your shit together. Subscribe to the podcast and rate it 5 stars if you're a baddie as fuck. Bye, y'all. See you next week.